What if some of... Hey, think your grocery store has it all? Kale, avocados, maybe some overpriced quinoa? Well, rewind to medieval times, and their dinner tables were rocking vegetables so wild, they'd make your smoothie bowl look basic. These 15 forgotten veggies fed kings, saved peasants, and some even got banned for being too spicy, and no, I'm not talking about hot sauce. Stick around to discover why these culinary legends vanished and what they can teach us today. Let's dig in, literally. Before we start, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss more food history that's tastier than your grandma's biryani. Today, we're unearthing 15 medieval vegetables that disappeared from our plates. Why did they vanish? Was it taste, trends, or something crazier? And here's a question for you: if you could bring one back, which would it be? Drop your thoughts in the comments, I'm reading every single one. 1. Skirit. Picture this, a medieval garden bursting with a veggie that looks like a gang of skinny, pale carrots holding hands. Meet skirit, the root that was basically medieval candy before sugar crashed the party. Skirit was a superstar in Europe's muddy fields, loved for its natural sweetness that made kids and kings go wild. Imagine biting into something sweet as honey, nutty as a parsnip, with a whisper of coconut. Yeah, it was that good. Medieval cooks were obsessed. They'd boil skirit until tender, mash it into creamy perfection, or fry it in butter and honey for a dish that'd make your TikTok food hacks jealous. A 15th century recipe even suggests baking it into tarts with spices like cinnamon, move over, pumpkin pie. King Henry VIII was such a fan that skirit was a VIP at royal feasts. I mean, the guy had 6 wives, but his real love? These sweet little roots. So why don't we eat skirit now? Blame the potato. When spuds sailed over from the Americas in the 1500s, they were like the new kid who steals your lunch table. Potatoes grew faster, stored longer, and fed more mouths per acre. Skirit couldn't keep up. By the 1700s, it was fading from gardens faster than dial-up internet. Today, a few food nerds grow it, describing its flavor as a mix of carrot, parsnip, and dreams. Here's the kicker: some chefs say skirit could make a comeback in fancy restaurants. Would you try a honey-glazed skirit tart? Comment below, sweet or savory, how do you cook it? Before we move on, what's a food you wish would make a comeback? Let's start a food revival in the comments. 2. Cosmary. Say hello to Cosmary, the herb-veggie hybrid that was medieval soup's secret weapon. With long, minty leaves, it grew like a dream in monastery gardens. Its flavor? Think peppermint with a balsam kick, perfect for perking up bland broths. Cooks tossed Cosmary into stews, salads, or ale for a zesty twist. A 12th century recipe calls it Mary's leaf, maybe for its churchyard vibes. Healers swore it soothed stomachs and headaches, basically medieval ibuprofen. Its leaves were even pressed into Bibles for a holy scent. Why did Cosmary vanish? Spices like coriander and mint were easier to store and trade. By the 1600s, it was out of kitchens, though some gardeners grow it for nostalgia. Imagine Cosmary in your ramen. Would you try it? Comment your spice level. 3. Alexanders. Next up, meet Alexanders, the medieval plant with an identity crisis. This green machine was like the Swiss Army knife of vegetables: stems like celery, leaves like spinach, roots like parsnips, and seeds that spiced things up like pepper. Basically, if your medieval pantry was empty, Alexanders was your BFF. The Romans dragged this plant to Britain, where it went viral, well, as viral as a plant can get in 43 AD. It thrived along coasts, popping up like weeds in ditches and roadsides. Medieval cooks loved its versatility. They'd chop the stems for crunchy salads, boil the leaves for hearty stews, or grind the seeds to sass up bland porridge. Its taste? Think celery with a parsley twist and a peppery kick that says, "I'm here." What made Alexander's clutch was its timing. In late winter, when food was scarcer than Wi-Fi in a forest, Alexander's was the only fresh green around. Monasteries kept patches of it as a survival hack. Imagine monks munching on it to avoid starvation. A 10th century record says it saved a whole village during a brutal famine. Talk about a glow up from roadside weed to lifesaver. So why did we ghost Alexander's? Enter celery, the smoother, milder cousin that stole the spotlight in the 1600s. Celery didn't need to grow in salty marshes and tasted less like a spice rack explosion. Alexander's got left behind, relegated to wild patches in the UK and Mediterranean. Foragers still hunt it, but most of us settle for boring celery sticks. Here's a thought: if you found Alexander's at a farmer's market, would you grab it or stick with celery? Drop your pick in the comments. I'm Team Alexander's for the flavor flex. 4. Churville. Churville was medieval Europe's parsley 2.0, lacy, delicate, and mildly anise-flavored. Grown in cottage gardens, it was a salad star, adding a sweet, licorice wine note. Cooks sprinkled Churville on fish, soups, or eggs for finesse. A 14th century text calls it spring's joy for its early growth. Packed with vitamin C, it kept scurvy at bay. Its downside? It wilted fast, a diva of greens. Parsley and cilantro, tougher and easier to grow, nudged Churville out by the 1600s. It's now a chef's herb, not a veggie. Would you revive Churville's salad days? Comment your green obsession. 5. Scorzanera. Ever wonder what a medieval flex looked like? Meet Scorzanera, the black, wrinkly root that had rich folks throwing cash like it was a Black Friday sale. Also called black salsify, this veggie looked like a carrot that lost a fight with a chimney but tasted like a 5-star dish. Scorzanera rolled into Europe from Spain and Italy in the 1500s, and its name, Italian for a black skin, kept it real. Under that rough exterior was creamy white flesh with a flavor mix of artichoke, oyster, and earthy goodness. A 1465 cookbook calls it the root of land and sea, served boiled with butter or roasted beside venison at fancy feasts. Preparing it was a pain. Cooks had to peel it carefully and dunk it in vinegar water to keep it pretty. High maintenance? Yes. Worth it? Totally. Medieval doctors hyped Scorzanera as a cure-all, especially for snake bites. The name comes from Vescorzo, Catalan for venomous snakes, because people thought it neutralized poison. A 1580 text claims it could fend off vipers and plague, bold claims for a veggie. While the snakebite cure flopped, its luxe vibe kept it on elite menus. So why did Scorzanera vanish? Taste changed, and newer veggies like carrots and beets were easier to grow and less fussy. By the 1800s, it was out of style, though some heirloom farmers still grow it. Its oyster-like flavor could slay in modern kitchens. Imagine it in a creamy soup. Quick question: would you pay extra for a veggie that tastes like oysters? Comment your thoughts, fancy or frugal. Let's hear it. 6. Good King Henry. Now, let's talk about Good King Henry, the leafy green with a name so fancy it sounds like it went to boarding school. Spoiler: it was the ultimate peasant food, feeding Europe's working class when times were tough. This plant, with its arrow-shaped leaves, grew like a champ in the wild and cottage gardens. Medieval folks harvested its young shoots in spring like asparagus and cooked the mature leaves like spinach all summer. Its taste? Earthy with a bitter edge that screamed, "I'm healthy." It was packed with vitamin C, saving countless peasants from scurvy when fruit was a distant memory. The name's a mystery. Some say it's tied to a German sprite called Heinz, others to King Henry IV of France, who wanted every peasant fed. More likely, it was medieval marketing, slapped king on a weed, and suddenly it's gourmet. Cooks boiled it with a dab of fat, if they had any, or tossed it into soups. A 15th century note says even the poorest households grew it as a backup plan. So why did Good King Henry fade? Spinach happened. In the 1600s, spinach rolled in with bigger leaves and a milder flavor. By the 1800s, our royal green was demoted to pig food. Ouch! Today, it's making a tiny comeback with eco-gardeners who call it perennial spinach. If you grew Good King Henry, would you eat it or feed it to the chickens? Comment below, I'm curious. 7. Meddler. Okay, who's got the patience to wait weeks for a fruit to be edible? Medieval people, that's who. Meet the Meddler, a fruit that looks like a tiny, grumpy apple and demand serious commitment. Medlars were a medieval hit, grown across Europe for their unique vibe. Fresh off the tree, they're hard as rocks and bitter as a bad breakup. The trick? Letting them sit after the first frost until they're soft, brown, and slightly fermented. Think applesauce with a cinnamon wine glow-up. A 14th century guide says to store them on straw, stem down, for 2 to 3 weeks until they're sweet as honey. Once bletted, medlars were a game changer. You could scoop out the mushy flesh, cook it into jams, or ferment it into cider. They were loaded with vitamin C, perfect for winter health, and lasted when other fruits didn't. A 1467 Castle record lists 20 bushels of medlars. Talk about stocking up. Their weird open-bottom shape even earned them the nickname open arse in England. Shakespeare loved that one. Why did medlars disappear? Convenience. By the 1800s, citrus fruits were easier to get, and nobody wanted to babysit fruit for weeks. Today, a few orchards keep them alive, but they're rare. Imagine medlar jam on your toast. Would you try it? What's the weirdest fruit you've ever eaten? Share your stories in the comments. I need some foodie inspiration. 8. Skunk cabbage. Brace yourself for skunk cabbage, the veggie that proves medieval people were desperate for greens. This plant grew in soggy marshes and smelled like, well, a skunk's bad day. Why eat it? Because starvation doesn't care about your nose. Skunk cabbage popped up early in spring, when food was scarcer than a good parking spot. Its big, cabbage-like leaves were a lifeline, packed with nutrients to fight scurvy. But cooking it? A nightmare. You'd boil it through 3 water changes, adding salt or ash to kill the stench. Then, you'd fry it with garlic to make it bearable. A 13th century text says it was a last resort, but it saved lives during famines. Medieval healers also swore by it for swelling and coughs, probably because the smell cleared the room. By the late Middle Ages, better greens like kale took over, and skunk cabbage was forgotten faster than a bad Tinder date. Would you cook something this stinky to survive? Comment your limit. What smell would you endure for food? 9. Rocket. You know arugula, that peppery green in your fancy salad? Back then, it was called rocket, and it was so scandalous, monks were banned from growing it. True story, rocket's been around since Roman times, loved for its spicy bite. Medieval cooks tossed it into salads or mixed it with mild greens to chill its vibe. It was easy to grow and packed with vitamins, making it a health hero. But here's the drama, people thought it was an aphrodisiac. An 11th century monk's guide warns it heats the blood and tempts young monks. Eating a salad could land you in confession. Secular folks didn't care, they ate it anyway. By the 1600s, milder lettuce varieties pushed rocket out, and it vanished until Italians brought it back in the 1900s. Now it's a foodie fave again. Would you ban a veggie for being too spicy? Comment your take, Team Rocket or Team Lettuce. 10. Woad. Woad's the veggie that moonlit as Europe's go-to blue dye. Those epic medieval tapestries? Woads work. But during famines, people ate its leaves, barely. Young woad leaves tasted like bitter spinach, and a 1317 record gripes they turn your tongue blue and don't fill you up. Workers fermenting woad in urine, weren't exactly hyped to snack on it. When indigo hit Europe in the 1600s, woad's dye gig ended, and nobody missed it as food. Would you eat a veggie that dyes your mouth blue? Comment your boldest food dare. 11. Parsnips. Before sugar was cheap, parsnips were the dessert hack. These pale roots got sweeter after frost, starring in stews, pies, and even jams. A 1390 cookbook has 11 parsnip recipes. Talk about a flex. Sugar and potatoes ruined parsnips' party. By the 1700s, sugar was affordable, and potatoes fed more people. Parsnips became a sidekick, not a star. Would you swap sugar for parsnips in your desserts? Comment your sweetest veggie idea. 12. Rampion. Ever read Rapunzel? The veggie she's named after is Rampion, a medieval root that was half radish, half bellflower. Its leaves were salad material, and the roots tasted peppery and crisp. Medieval peasants loved Rampion for its double duty, greens and roots in one plant. It grew like a weed, perfect for lean times. But carrots and turnips were easier to store, so Rampion got benched by the 1700s. Would you grow Rampion for a fairy tale vibe? Comment your magical food pick. 13. Orich. Orich was medieval Europe's Instagram-worthy veggie, think spinach but in reds, purples, and greens. Grown since ancient times, it was a peasant staple, packed with vitamins and easy to harvest. Its taste? Milder than spinach with a salty tang. Cooks boiled orich for soups or ate it raw in salads. A 14th century record says it was a go-to for fasting days when meat was off limits. Its colors made it a feast day flex, imagine purple greens at a banquet. Spinach and chard, with bigger yields, pushed orich out by the 1700s. It's now a niche garden plant. Would you grow orich for its rainbow vibes? Comment your colorful food dreams. 14. Colart. Before cabbage became the star of coleslaw and sauerkraut, its scrappy ancestor, Colart, ruled medieval Europe. This leafy green was the ultimate survivor, sprouting in rough soils and harsh winters when other crops gave up. Picture kale's tougher, grittier cousin, chewy, slightly bitter, and begging for a long boil to tame its edge. For peasants scraping by, Colart was a godsend, turning empty stomachs into something resembling satisfied. Medieval kitchens leaned hard on Colart's reliability. Cooks would stew it with onions or, if they were feeling fancy and lucky, a bit of bacon grease to mask its rugged flavor. A 13th century record calls it a famine food, cheap enough to feed entire villages when harvests tanked. Loaded with vitamin C, it was a winter warrior against scurvy, saving lives when fresh fruit was a distant dream. Monasteries, always practical, grew patches as a backup plan, ensuring no one went hungry during lean times. It wasn't glamorous, but it got the job done. So why did Colart vanish? By the 1600s, modern cabbages strutted onto the scene with tighter heads, milder flavors, and easier prep. No more chewing through tough leaves or boiling for hours, cabbage was the upgrade everyone wanted. Colart couldn't compete and faded into obscurity, barely a footnote in veggie history. Today, you'd be hard-pressed to find it outside a few heritage gardens where food nerds geek out over its gritty charm. Imagine swapping your crispy cabbage for this medieval workhorse. Would you stew it up or pass? Colart may not have cabbage polish, but its story screams resilience. Could you handle its tough love in your kitchen, or are you loyal to the modern stuff? Drop your veggie allegiance in the comments, Team Colart or Team Cabbage. Let's settle this medieval showdown. 15. Hipup. Hipup, known from biblical tales, doubled as a medieval vegetable. This bushy herb, grown in monastery gardens, had minty, bitter leaves with a rosemary pepper kick. Its bold flavor made it a spiritual and culinary star. Medieval cooks tossed hipup into salads, soups, or meat dishes, think pork with a fancy twist, as a 15th century recipe suggests. Healers praised it for colds, claiming it purified the blood, while monasteries relied on it for Lent-friendly meals. It was the ultimate holy green, blending faith and function. By the 1700s, imported herbs like thyme stole the spotlight, relegating hipup to ornamental gardens. Today, it's a rare culinary herb, not a veggie. Would you try this sacred green in your salad? Comment your holy food pick. And there you have it, 15 medieval vegetables that went from table staples to history's footnotes. From sweet Skirit to scandalous rocket, these foods shaped lives and tasted better than they smelled. Looking at you, Skunk Cabbage. Which one do you want to revive? Drop it in the comments and let's get a veggie revolution going. If you loved this deep dive, smash that like button, share with your foodie friends, and subscribe for more edible history. What forgotten food should we explore next? Tell me below, I'm all ears and appetite. See you in the next video.